be Tigers eventually. I told the last meeting that our incoming kindergarten future, and you have to have the kind of facilities that they need to be able to grow in a world that continues to evolve. You know that there was a ballot, issue 33, and that was for the Tiger Legacy Project. It was a 4.27 mil ask for 107. We were very depressed after we received the news that it went down, and stayed there for a second, but then we said, wait a minute. We were very reflective on every community conversation we had. So we heard a lot about traffic on Ravenna Road, Route 14. And the new pre-K 6 building was going to be built where our current Tiger Stadium is. And a lot of traffic, all kind of impacting a small mile or so of land or road. And so I'm going to ask
roundabouts, that kind of thing. And when we got the results back, it was actually favorable to put, still do have that data from the traffic study. And when they do a traffic study, they don't just look, they sit down and they look at how many parents do car drop off, how many buses come proposing to build a building. They look at all the live data from around the district, and then they converge on about the same type of building just further up Ravenna Road. We're pretty confident that those results will be even more favorable.
Its current location up behind the high school campus in the back, which or that community, the community that kind of brings the back of the Twinsburg High School campus. Concerned about traffic. They were concerned about Friday night lights in their backyard, about the band playing, about the boys practice soccer field to a mini stadium, as it were, on the Dodge side of the road. And then the Dodge considered all of those things as well. Hearing from the neighbors that had a child go to Dodge, or you field that's located at Dodge, or you have children who play on the playground, you know the wastewater treatment plant. And so we heard time and again from residents that be found to be distracting. So we heard that time and again. We also heard these who might come to the school, maybe for a Harvard Valentine's Day party or any kind of event. We heard it from the residents that they were concerned about ample parking. Significant changes to address the concerns that were brought forth during the last ballot issue.
I have a question to see.
In part, about $15 million will
So greater than 50% will be covered by the state.
about 17%.
That's 17.
Of the, it's only the part of the state organization. Great question. It said, interesting, but no thank you. It's because things are not getting, and 300 wing at Dodge the students had to be relocated because the heating went out. So we are shifting lunch from Twinsburg High School to serve here because there isn't power to cook the meal. We make it happen for them, but it is an inconvenience factor for the students, and it's certainly an inconvenience factor. Everything is going up, as you know. Go to the grocery store. Utilities, costs to repair things, capital improvement projects, all cost more money. So we're trying to even higher. And then of course our athletic facilities, although the main portion of this project, the main focus I should say, is making sure that we build this athletes here in our school district. But truth be told, last spring the track had to be repaired. An emergency needs to be repaired. We're going to patch it, much like you see the ODOT crew, but it's a temporary fix. And then the bigger issue we have is the turf. The turf is now in its 10th season, if you're familiar, and so you have the chance of student athletes getting their foot stuck in a seam and an injury. As we use it now, but it's going to have to be replaced within the next year.
Legacy project in the fall. Our Board of Education elected, and what they do when they come into your district, they offer comprehensive assessments to all of the board's properties. Your doors, your floors, your roof systems, your entire property. Basically what they offer you up is, and it's where they tell you the kind of shape that you're building, and they give you the options to either renovate or replace each building that the board owns. Enrollment projection is important because it gives you a snapshot of not just where your district is with your student head count, but it looks important because when they look at that data, they look at all your zoning and all the communities in your school. Or anything marked for zoning that might bring in planned developments, planned neighborhoods. They don't want you to build a building that's too big or too small, because either way, that's a waste of taxpayer money. There's been three or four studies done between the school district and the city, and they all tell us the same thing, that our enrollment is very static. We don't have any dips, we don't have any projected when we talk about building a building. Also with the OFCC, that we talk co-funding. One of the biggest reasons that districts or public entities would partner with OFCC on your project. That's unique in that typically, so the way the state school districts, as taxpayers, you might have heard things like the wealth index or the equity rating. And what that means is Twinsburg City School District, that's Twinsburg City, Twinsburg Township, City of Reminderville, on a property where you live. They take all of that value and the says that the Twinsburg City School District is worth over $1 billion taxable property. Okay, so they pump that into an equity rating system, and out comes this number. A personal budget, that might not sound like a lot, but when you talk about a multi-million dollar, $15 million that the board would receive at a later, recognizes Twinsburg City School District as a wealthy district. We have real bills and real challenges, the same as any other district, but it is nice to partner with an entity that at least offers us a co-funding match on the project.
I think before you go further, the OFCC, if the Board of Education would request that we would continue that again from ground level with the assessments of our building, with the enrollment study. I was in Columbus just last Wednesday, and I was driving up. I got back. I called Matt and I said, "Hey," I said, "our future are in peril." So we have a and authorized by the OFCC governing board, so we're confident in this. Following the end of this school year into next year, we would have to start back. At this point, the state legislators, the governor's office are working on the state's biennium budget. It's going to be funded at what degree? And so we may be at the best spot that we could possibly be. Not to say that I'd be a little bit worried about a future down the line if this project doesn't move forward. So last we're pretty pleased with their partnership at this point. But again, moving into next school year, we would be back at ground zero.
We talked a lot about this slide in the fall, and we bring it up again because we looked at the final numbers and the recommendations, and we compiled this because it was the that we were given and what we're dealing with. So how is this different? This is our renovate versus replace slide. How to do a kitchen renovation, you get to pick out all your finishes, and you do some electrical and some plumbing and your cabinetry and your tile and your flooring and all of $4 million to renovate Bissell the way the state to whatever code in the year that you do the work in. So let's say the work happens in fire codes, handicap accessibility or ADA compliance codes, and then building and construction codes. Get grandfathered on a lot of things. So if you're an inspector, you might walk through an older school building and say, well, this isn't up to modern code, perfectly modern codes. Sometimes you run into the building won't support a modern code. You don't gain classroom space, you don't gain parking spots, you don't gain stitches, new paint, anything like that. You gain new HVAC systems, new electrical systems, plumbing, that's up, or how you're actually educating children. They also give us all new seating, all new classroom furniture, all new systems, obviously, top to bottom. So there's nothing additional that a district needs to buy. It's ready to go at that price. If you see this percent threshold, and what does that mean? If you do the math, the cost to renovate versus replace Bissell, it's 81. If you own a building that goes over that, and you plan to go out for a bond issue, you should renovate the building. When you look at all of our projects, we're exceeding the 2/3 rule on all of our buildings. That's because apart from the high school at a little over 20 years old, everything else is definitely. In this proposed project, the scope of the project, the building itself, has not changed from the Wilcox, Bissell, and Dodge, and building a large school with pre-K through 6th grade levels. School buildings fall, they're all well over 66%. Now, one question we frequently get, and we're not hiding from it, well, at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School, 66% you should rebuild the school or renovate. What gives there? It's not that RBC and the high school are not renovations, but it's not through the bond dollars itself. The renovations that RBC will see between permanent improvement funds and our general funds. We receive two different fund streams that my department back all of that, and that's primarily our permanent improvement fund. We feel that by the closure of 3 old buildings, school buildings, but a bus garage, a maintenance facility, and a Board of Education office. So the Board of Education actually owns and maintains dollars that are currently maintaining these as well, and more centralize them right into R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. But we're not addressing anything at RBC. That's not, it's just not directly through the bond, it's offset through money we won't. Then down the road, when the board receives that nearly $15 million in co-funding from the state, that money can also be allocated into repairs at your other buildings. Does that make sense? Okay, so this just recaps what we just talked about, but the other thing we want to lean on building a new building is we're working with, you'll see a slide here coming up that references a building that Brecksville Broadview Heights, a new elementary school, and we took an administrative tour of that building, and I'll tell you, other than the typical things you think you would see that are cool in a new school, like new furniture, everything is an educational space. Large spaces like this, actually very similar to this idea where you have a cafeteria, a gymnasium, and an auditorium stage all in one. This concept is in any new building, but the security, the safety component behind a new building is something that we really can't retrofit an old building for. And what I mean by, just to get into that building, there's a 3-tiered security system before a human is ever in with the kids or the staff. You have to go through this multi-tiered system that we really can't, it's very cost prohibitive to try to outfit an old building with that new security in that every door in a new building is on a magnetic lock. So the administration, if there's an emergency, individual parts of the building could put on lockdown if it didn't require the whole building to be. We don't have that ability now in our current buildings, but in a new building you would have that state-of-the-art security, state-of-the-art camera system that communicates directly with police and fire. All of the things that are very difficult to retrofit now comes with a new building like this.
So one of the most exciting parts of this revised Tiger Legacy project is our partnership with the city of Twinsburg. And I just want to explain how we got here. Back in 2016, when we were going to build a new school, it was only going to be the replacement of Dodge. It was going to replace the grades 4, 5, and 6. Smaller complex. It was going to be built behind the fitness center where the boys practice soccer field currently is. And so it wasn't Matt at that time, it was Chad Welker was our business manager. He and I were out talking to the community members about this project and trying to gain some interest in it. And at that point, it was Mayor Ted Yates. And Mayor Yates was at one of our meetings and he was a supporter of the schools. Well, when they built Twinsburg High School, it was a time and space where not every upperclassman had a vehicle. practically all our juniors and seniors drive. And so the traffic at arrival and dismissal at the high school is very busy. Add a staff, add a fitness center staff, add fitness center clients, and then of course the students, and then you add buses in the middle of all that. And with an elementary school being built up there, of course we'd have a lot of bus traffic. So Mayor Yates was not a fan. He said, we're gonna have to think of something else. This is really not gonna work for the city. And at that point, he introduced to me an idea of land swapping. And Mayor Yates at that point was interested in building a maintenance garage and was talking to us about maybe a part of the Dodge property to build his new maintenance facility. And in turn, he introduced the idea of the land that is located on Route 91 in Glenwood, sort of behind Fire Station 2. And so we were really excited about a possibility, and we actually had our architect go up there, and then he did some renderings of a school building and some athletic fields. And this was about 2018, 2019, lots of planning, lots of excitement behind the scenes. 2020 happened and the world stopped because the pandemic happened. And so we put all of the plans in the closet, and the only thing that the school district and the world was worried about was keeping everybody safe and getting kids back to school when it was time to do that. So we didn't revisit those plans for that land swap agreement. In 2021, when the Board of Education said, okay, kids are back, we're back in the business of school, let's start this conversation about Tiger Legacy, we never pulled the plans out of the closet. We continued just to talk about the property that the board owned. And so the Tiger Legacy project that was part of last spring and fall and the ballot issue in November was that plan where we were just using the board's property. So fast forward to November, the ballot issue fails at the box. We start to consider all the things that we heard, and I remember that conversation with Mayor Yates. And so we made an appointment, went across the street and visited with Mayor Scafidi. And he didn't know about the whole land swap thing, and he was curious about it. And so he spent some time, talked to who he needed to at the city, and called me and he said, you know, it's not gonna work, because back when Mayor Yates talked to you about that land, the roundabouts weren't there, right? So you have that big major roundabout right at that intersection. You can't turn left out of the property because you're going to get into the roundabout. You can't turn left off on Glenwood because of the island. It's not really a good piece. That's not going to work. So being who I am, a middle child, only girl in my family, I was persistent. You have to be with two brothers, right? And I said to Mayor Scafidi, is there something else in the city's portfolio that we maybe could talk about? And about a week or so later, he introduced this property, this 28.5-acre plot of land that sits between Ravenna Road and Chamberlain. And so that is what we're going to talk about this evening, this land swap with the city of Twinsburg, which is in process. And we're pretty excited about the possibility of this new school being built on the property. And here's what's more interesting than any of this, is the Board of Education in the 60s actually owned this particular piece of land. And when the high school was built, there was some kind of a trade-off. I'm not sure exactly how it all happened, but the title of this land transferred from the Board of Education to the city of Twinsburg. And now we're just talking about it going back the other way. So it's very interesting, just the city history and how things end up going around and around, but we're very grateful to the city to be talking with us now about this land swap. What the land swap would also mean is that we would vacate, the Board of Education would vacate the entirety of the Dodge campus. So not only will Dodge Intermediate School, once the new school is built, that building will be abated and demolished. We are also vacating the boys' varsity field and the girls' practice soccer field, and those fields will be positioned on the other side of Ravenna Road, and we're going to talk about that plan right now.
Okay, as Superintendent Powers mentioned, this is the lot that we're talking about, and then this image also is a bit more zoomed out. And just to get your bearings, so Ravenna Road cuts right up through here, and just further north is the Board of Education, and then this would be Chamberlain Road that comes down through here, and then Chamberlain Trail runs this way. So this acreage right now is currently just a mature wooded lot. What we have proposed, not that different than the building structure that you saw in the fall. In that, it is all one roof structure, so it's not 2 or 3 buildings, it is all in one. But the function of it in a newer design model for these buildings are houses. So what you see here is the furthest north would be a pre-K through kindergarten, 1-story house, because we don't want little people climbing stairs all day. So we've got a pre-K through kindergarten house, and then a grades 1 and 2 house, that is 2 stories. The common space in the middle are your gymnasiums, cafeteria, kitchen, your anchor spaces that all the grade levels would use. And then further south on the structure, a grades 3 and 4 house, also 2 stories, and then a grades 5 and 6 house, also 2 stories. When you look at the concept drawings, like the artwork that the architect has created, we want you to see that even while this looks a little bit different than these, please understand these are an architect's rendering to basically show the square footage footprint that it does fit on the lot. We want people to know that while the concept won't drift very far from this or very far from this, the inside, the design process is all up to the community and our educators. Upon passage of a ballot, you immediately engage in teams, the whole district, people in their specialties, your arts departments, your science, your math. You get little collective pockets and you say, okay, in your area of the building, what do you need to see in a new building? So we know the square footage is good, but the design process, the funnest part, is really community and staff engagement to design the inside of the school. But as you see, you have a dedicated bus lane that wraps around the perimeter. In our last meeting, we talked to a lot of folks at Wilcox that live in the communities around the proposed project, and they brought up a lot of discussion about drainage. They brought up, well, we don't really like how close this drawing shows you to our neighborhood. And as you can see, there's plenty of acreage north and south of the proposal. It's not difficult for us to expand parking there and back it off of the property boundary. But again, this is just a rendering to show what can fit. But it's community engagement like that they actually had some really amazing feedback about drainage challenges that their development has, that we hope that we could help them address through our project. We actually brought all of that feedback to our architect. He knew exactly what they were talking about. They can access different builders' records, and he accessed everything about the builder that built this. And he said, well, absolutely, their issues come up through here, and he rattled off all this different terminology. But the exciting thing is there is that opportunity for us to be a good neighbor, be a good partner, and help address issues that they showed us pictures. They pulled out things that have been happening on their property that we could potentially address by proper drainage, proper irrigation of this property. So as you can see, plenty of parking. The playground spaces are all set up on this far side. And there's a lot of intentionality, though, to this design, because we do want the building itself. You're taking a wooded lot and placing a building full of kids in it. We don't want to be disruptive to the area neighbors. One thing we do point out, this is not a high school. This is not going to see the traffic 24/7. Our high school almost never closes. Our stadium almost never closes. This is not that. This is pre-K through 6. So you might have some evening conferences or maybe a special 1 night, 2 nights of the week. This is not going to function like an older grade level building. But it is set as far back in the wooded lot as we can with the property that it is to be as minimally invasive to the neighborhood. So we are trying to be responsive to that. And the other nice thing is its distance into the wooded lot. We can get parents and bus traffic up to a 1/4 mile off of Ravenna Road. So any questions or concerns we had about traffic at where the stadium is, they've more than been addressed here. As Superintendent Powers talked about, because we swapped the Dodge property to the city of Twinsburg, anything athletics that go on there now have to be moved over onto the other side of Ravenna Road. So this captures that in that varsity baseball would move behind the high school, which you'll see in a moment. But in that move, 9th grade and JV baseball moves over in front of RBC. The nice thing about this move is middle school baseball also gets to then use a brand new playing surface. Our girls softball field, Hoon Field, gets total renovations and stays right where it sits. Football practice field stays where it is, and girls soccer practice currently behind Dodge. It would move over here, and if you pay attention, our girls soccer program is really fantastic. And they're excited about this move because it puts them right here by the stadium, so they have access to restrooms and the locker room, which they don't currently have at Dodge. So in a way, it's a much safer move to get them over behind the stadium. And then the stadium, you'll see in a moment, is the highest dollar part of the athletic renovation, and that's because it's every component nearly of the stadium as it stands now. Concessions, locker rooms, restrooms, the turf, the track, bleachers, lighting, sound, all of that needs upgrades for efficiencies and safety. So that's where the stadium dollars come in.
Is there any improved parking over there?
So when you do a project like this, you'll have to do repaving. Do you mean expanded parking though?
Yeah, because it's pretty bad right now.
So I think we haven't discussed that yet, but I will tell you, when we get to the financial slides, there's a lot of contingency dollars that are built in to address things just like that. If you look back at our fall version of this, you'll see some different expanded parking. I'm sure we'll probably revisit some of those. And then as we discussed, varsity baseball then moves behind the high school. This was a much greater feat than what we thought because of the dimensions that are required for a high school varsity baseball field. Superintendent Powers caught the original artwork, had it flipped around, and it fit better on the property, but then the kids would be batting into the sunset, and that's not a great thing for your batting average, so it got flipped around. We own this roadway, so we may straighten this out, and we would expand this parking lot a bit just for the sake of our marching band and to add some additional parking space at our high school. And the practice soccer field just stays where it's at. Yes.
What year was the stadium originally built?
Oh, Lord.
I don't know.
I don't know offhand, but I have the data.
It's not in the trivia.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I could find that.
Yeah.
I was just curious, like, you know.
Okay, so.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
How did you come up with the campus design as opposed to raising each individual school and replacing the school? How did you come up with this campus design as opposed to each building?
That's a great
Because
question.
you would stay in your current footprint if you just replaced the building.
Part of the issue is if you're going to rebuild, say, Bissell, the students have to study someplace during that period of construction. In this plan, the students will stay here until the new building is built, and then they're transitioned to the new school, and this building will be abated and demolished. More than that, what we look for is efficiencies. We spend a lot of money on staffing. We have the best staff here in the school district, but part of the issue, especially for our special area folks, is the traveling between schools. So, for example, I'll give you the example of our music department. Right now, Mr. Bonitz is at 4 schools. He has to travel between 4 schools. And in the teacher's negotiated agreement with the board, you have to allow for travel time. So when you have travel time, that's not instructional time, so you're actually taking minutes away from students that would otherwise be used in the classroom because you have to give the staff time to go clean the snow off their windshields and travel to the other school. This way, everyone is under the same roof, and they don't have to have that travel time between buildings, which will equate to additional instructional time for children. The other thing that we really like about this is shared services within our staff. We have very talented teachers. Let's talk about maybe the area of reading. A teacher who's a reading specialist here at Bissell is assigned to the Bissell school, but what if she is a particular expert in something that a child might need at the younger buildings? Right now, we're not able to get them from here to there because of their assignment here. But we would be able to be more flexible on the scheduling based on the talents and experience of our staff to make sure that all students get exactly what they need under the new building. And as Matt said, really we spend a lot of time talking about safety and security. We can't retrofit our buildings to things that we know that we need to make sure that the environment is as safe as it possibly can. Back in 2000, I think it was 16, is when the Board of Education built the welcome centers on each of the schools. And they've done a great job, right? I'm not going to say they haven't, but that's just the beginning of what could and should be done to keep kids safe. So we are looking to be able to lock down certain wings of the school. Right now we can't do that. So if we have a situation, and it could just be a student who's having just a bad meltdown kind of day, but they might be disruptive in the hallway, to be able to lock down or close those doors so the rest of the building is not hearing that, so the rest of the students can study and pay attention to what they're doing in their classroom. There's real value to that for kids. So we believe that consolidating services really will add more value to the experience our students will have here in the school district.
Yeah, a lot of talk about safety and security, and rightfully so. Is there a portion of the new pre-K through 6 building that will be designed as a storm shelter?
That's a great question.
So the state defines storm shelter a couple different ways. So you can elect before you start your project to make it certain ratings. I'll tell you that the new design, any school, we partner with the Red Cross, and we have to allow them to list our schools as storm shelters for the community. This school would absolutely be. Currently, our high school is. There's certain years and beyond where they meet certain criteria. This building would meet that criteria. There are tornado proofing components that you can engage in or not. I will say that as part of being for the LEED certification, silver certification, that's not required. I will tell you it about 1.5 doubles the cost of the project, because the reinforcement, you're kind of designing, you probably know, you're kind of designing a shell over certain main components. But I will tell you the new construction, the design rating of everything is rated right up to the largest disasters that Ohio has ever seen, I guess is the way I would put that. And they partner with insurance companies and claims to see what would this building likely see in the weather patterns of Northeast Ohio.
My understanding is that, of course, you wouldn't need to have the entire building or footprint designed as a storm shelter.
Right.
What I have seen in the past is maybe a classroom room that could, I think it's 5 square feet per student you need to be able to fit into the storm shelter area.
Yeah.
And typically one classroom wing would account for that. So
Yeah.
it's not like, so it may be 1.5 times the cost of that wing, but certainly not one.
Not the whole project, right? We can get a bit more narrow of an answer. Now I understand more where you're going with that. I will get with OFCC and the architect. Generally what they do, if you agree to that, they'll take your anchor space where all your biggest spaces like this are, and they'll fortify those. But what you're talking about is more granular in the classroom space. So for something like that, we would probably look more at the pre-K.
You look at the one
single
story, because
Yep.
it would be less costly.
Yeah.
Storm shelters,
Yeah.
put into schools in the gymnasium or cafeteria where
Sure.
you've got the tall, thin walls.
Right,
and
right.
It is very costly. So
Right.
I won't.
No, thank you. That's great feedback. We'll get some better answers for that. Thank you.
On these, you said it's one continuous roof. Do all these sections have HVAC units running on the top of each building?
They do. Everything is independent of each other. Another really cool feature of these buildings, the PA system. So the pre-K through kindergarten house is not hearing the same pre-K announcements and general disruptions throughout the day as the grades 1 and 2. However, the building does have the autonomy that, let's say in an emergency, it needed to be an all building communication. You have that ability to go all building or just your house specifically. But yes, everything is independent of each other. So while everything can communicate with each other, HVAC wise, every house is independent as far as any utilities, all of that. And I'll tell you another reason that's really important for Twinsburg City School District. If you follow us in any type of bad news, last May we had a lightning strike at our high school, and that event taught us that our whole district, the high school is our mothership with data, with our phones, with all of our communication systems. Because it's our newest building, it controls all of the other buildings when it comes to internet, phone service, all of that. So when that building shut down, the whole district shut down. What we learned is we hope to, in a new construction, create some redundancies that make us less dependent on one building and help us then have two facilities where we can better separate. So if we had a disaster like that, the whole district isn't crippled like it was. For example, this coming summer, we're working with our vendor right now on when that panel is going to be installed, because when that panel gets installed, it will close the district for almost a week and the city's fitness center, because the fitness center is also uniquely tied completely into our high school. So with a new build, you get away from a lot of that dependence, and you can create some redundancies that we don't currently have.
And does the architect have elevation drawings for the residents in Stone Creek? What are we gonna be looking at?
Yes, ma'am. So they, right now, that is exactly what the architect operates from, is all the topographical maps. And he already, when he was looking at it, when I called him after our Wilcox showing, and he talked about the elevation differences in this wooded lot versus Stone Creek, to be specific.
Yes.
That's when he talked about the stream. He talked about how it was, they used certain tunneling, and every architect will tell you they wouldn't have done it the way the other one did. But because of the elevation, when you build to modern code, what we don't show on here, but we know that is a demand when you build a new building, especially this large, is water retention. You're going to see in the video for Brecksville Broadview Heights, they ended up with a really nice pond for water retention. This might have one or two on the property, and in that is where he said they would mitigate a lot of the drainage issues that are going on here, and it all is because of that creek. So I don't pretend to understand everything that he's saying, but the topography and us having to address the issues in building a new building, it's all in where you displace water. And we feel that we can keep a lot of it on our side of the property, so to speak, to where it's not having such a destructive effect on your neighborhood. Does that make sense?
And they would have a lot of more definition of the distance between the properties and the campus.
Yes.
My concern is, I live in that neighborhood. And you're taking all the students, all the traffic, everything, and
Sure.
you're putting it right in our backyard.
Yeah, they were, and I'm going to keep citing the Wilcox meeting, because everyone that showed up seemed to live right in there. But it was great feedback. It was the best feedback we've ever had, actually. And they talked about, they were saying, we'd like to see like 10 to 15 feet of natural tree line at least to border this. And again, we don't want people to be terrified and go, man, there's going to be this parking lot right by the back end of my house. When we did this, we wanted to show that we could fit more parking on this lot than the RBC proposal. But again, when you look at up here and down here, we could easily stretch this and bring it in. And we've already told the architect that was a demand that we've already heard from the community. And that's why this is a conversation and a partnership. This is not in stone. The building, again, will look a lot like this, the footprint, but the parking lot, all those ancillary spaces, that comes out of the design process from feedback like yours, where a resident says, hey, this is not going to work. This needs to come way in. We don't want that much. Because that tree, we recognize what a nice boundary trees just naturally are.
If I could insert myself here, so what we committed ourselves to, and we have the name of your homeowners association president, we want to have a meeting in your neighborhood. To walk the property line and to listen to what you have to say. So Mr. Zarilla, I think, is the HOA president of Stone Creek. So before you leave, if you don't mind giving us your name and phone number, so that when we have that meeting, we can call everyone who's interested in being there and do the very thing that Matt's talking about, is making sure that the project is going to work for the neighbors that are going to be right to the side of our campus. Yes. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question to piggyback off of what she just asked.
Yeah.
The lighting, is the lighting 24/7, or does it go off at a certain time? Because you're going to light up everybody around your home. And the reason I ask is because you're going to build a road right next to my house on the backside. I'm just curious about that also.
Yeah, I think campus, you immediately think of Twinsburg High School, and those lights stay on until about 11 o'clock at night on purpose, because we've got kids coming and going from athletic competition, show choir, orchestra. This is not a high school campus. Much like if you go around this building after dark, if you go to Wilcox after dark, it is very dark on the campus once the students are gone, unless we have an event. All of our lights are on timers, so we make it convenient for the campus, but also for the residents that live nearby. So it will not be lit up like Twinsburg High School. Yes?
I have a question. So this service road that you might have to put in, my question is, why didn't Dodge, Wilcox, or Bissell have a service road?
One way in, one way out.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't even want to guess what the folks who built this building were thinking when they built it. I think the world has changed since this building was built. It used to be lots of kids walked to school, lots of kids rode bikes to school. It was a neighborhood school, so it had a different look. And then when the Board of Education many years ago went to this grade band approach to educating students, that's when the traffic started to get very busy, because we're bringing kids from the other side of the community to Bissell when they're 2nd and 3rd grade. It doesn't matter where you live, you all come here for school. So it just wasn't, I can't answer what the forefathers did. I just know that if you're going to have that many students on a campus, you have to have an access road for fire and police, and that would be the intention of the back road onto Chamberlain Trail, using the property that is part of the land swap with the city. We believe it'll be a fobbed gate, and the only people that would have access through the back door would be Twinsburg Fire and Police and those responders that would work in tandem with them.
Who's actually designing that part of the service road? I would like to talk, because I live right on that road that they want to.
Yes, so again, if you give us your name and number when the design process begins, we'd be happy to have you part of that conversation. That particular aspect of this has to be built to the specs of what Twinsburg Police and Fire say that it needs to be, right? Because it would be their access road in and out the back of the building. Have the worst day ever, you want to make sure they can get in, and they can't be waiting to come up through Ravenna Road. So that would be the purpose for that back door, would be just for fire and police.
Why wasn't that on the diagram that you have there? Service road.
That was just an omission, I'm sorry. Yeah, because that's the architect's rendering of the building. Yeah, and that's all that happens to be. Yes, ma'am.
So I also live in a house that's right there, and we flooding up to and I do have a drainage issue, so I definitely would like to be part of that meeting. What about will there be anything there to potentially stop trespassing? Is there going to be a fence or anything, or are they literally going to be able to just walk 2 yards into my
Yeah, so similar to, I'll compare it to the high school border now with the Ashdale neighborhood. When we talked to them about some concerns they had when we were proposing the stadium, every neighborhood sort of gets to decide, and you start to sort of pull the neighborhood and say, do any kids live there that want to cut through, that maybe want a gate? If the answer is no, we put up either chain link, privacy fencing. Really, it's whatever the residents that border it want. So if you say, well, maybe an opening in case a kid moves in that wants to commute on foot or ride their bike through, but we really leave that up to each adjoining neighborhood. But absolutely, there's a border. This is kind of fortunate because a lot of it's a natural tree border, but so is the Ashdale neighborhood behind the high school, and we still have a fence that runs the whole border. So we would have a fence either way. I think what our communication with the neighbors would be, do we want to allow an opening for any residents that want to come through and use the playground, or that their child attends the school? But there absolutely is a fence border.
I'll give you the example of Charles Court. Charles Court is that dead-end street by Wilcox Primary School. Years ago, it used to be open. And what was happening is when we would have events at the primary school, parents would park on Charles Court, and then they were cutting through the neighbors' yards. And this was when Chief Noga was chief of police. So he called me and he said, we're going to do something about this. And so that's why that fence is there now, because it was so disruptive to the residents to have people parking down their street and cutting through their yards. That fence has been there ever since. So our commitment is to make sure that we're good neighbors. And so some neighborhoods, when we spoke with the people on Ashdale, a certain family member said, or parent said, don't close that up totally, because I walk through to take my daughter to the library. So you know, you have to listen to what people say and then be responsive to that. So that's the reason why we want to have community conversations with the residents who are bordering the new school, so that we get it right the first time.
You just brought up Wilcox, so I'll ask this question. So we know that this property is going to be some sort of a park,
Yes, we're going to get to it right now.
and then Dodge is going to be the service department.
I don't know. It's the city of Twinsburg making that
It's going to be the
decision.
service department. I heard about it in the meeting.
Okay.
What's going on with Wilcox? The land there.
We're going to show you. Pretty excited about that too. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so without further ado, one of the things that we heard the last time we were out talking to our community members was, you don't have a plan for the Bissell and the Wilcox property. Does that mean the board's going to sell the property? Does that mean a developer's going to come in and put condos or houses in my backyard? And so we knew that when we were revising this project, we needed to have a plan. And we have very talented educators here. I said that up more than once already tonight. But I'd like to introduce one of the very best. This is Cindy Kurt. She is a phenomenal science teacher at Twinsburg High School. And if anybody knows anything about environmental education, it is Mrs. Kurt. So we reached out to her and said, you know, this property is valuable. The board does not really want to sell this property, but we have to have a purpose for it. What can we create here that would be great for the community, but it's also going to be great for kids? And so I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Kurt to explain how Bissell property will be repurposed.
And it was evident tonight when I pulled in park and there was 2 deer just sitting and eating right there in front of me, and like the lights to my car didn't even phase them. They just kept doing what they're doing. So this is a great property, and it also has trees on it too. So again, like Matt had said, this is a rendering of a sketch kind of thing, not set in stone. So these are possible things that will happen here. And again, all of these things that are on here are going to happen in phases. And this is going to be funded all by grants and different community groups and things partaking to put all of this, to make this all possible together. So we have the area where the building would exist, and we have the current trees. So we would put like a hiking trail through here, and I've spoken to the cross-country coach, and she's excited because they could utilize that for a trail running to practice and condition. We have a sitting space. This is one of my favorites. You just go out in the middle of the woods, you kind of do some, you know, forest therapy. Places where community members can go. Teachers can bring their classes here, because we're going to leave the access here where parking and buses and stuff can still access the area. And then including an activity area, we have an engagement station, a pavilion, so it could be utilized for different events and things. So you could see, I have a list of tons of things that we can do here. And also including a picnic area, amphitheater, and meadows. I'm currently getting my pollinator steward certification too. And this is one of the things that is really important in environmental science right now, is bringing back native plants to support the native life. And these are pockets of meadows that we can put in, and there's groups within Twinsburg. The Twinsburg Native Habitat Association is one that is really promoting doing this and taking mowed areas and turning them into areas that the environment can benefit from. So we would keep the existing sidewalks and make this ADA compliant, and other options, you know, we could do tree studies, bird watching, put trail cams, weather stations. There's so many things we could tie in with this that the whole community can access and be part of, as well as the students of any of the buildings within the district. Even all the way down to a pop-up ice rink, you know. So thinking big and outside the box.
So Nikki, talk about the grant fund.
Yes, so there's tons of grants. I have received grants to put in meadows at the high school and get materials for STEM teaching and things like that. And the The Corps of Engineers also have grants available and will come in and help build and put these things in. So there are ways to make this happen without tapping into the school's funds none of this monies that comes from this project will be this. This will all be funded through grants and projects by groups.
Any questions about the repurposing of this? Thank you. So this would be the plan for Bissell, would really to make it a place for our students and the community to enjoy environmental education. One of the things that Matt didn't mention is he is a, what do you call yourself?
A nature nerd.
Yes, him. I didn't call him that. That's what he calls himself.
It's all right.
And he spends a lot of time in the woods. So when we were up on the property, the ground that we're talking about for the new school, he was noticing all the native plants up there. He was identifying elf ear fungus and all these crazy things. But some of those native plants would be then repositioned to the Bissell property. We understand that there's a natural spring on this property, there's a bog on this property, so to be able to capitalize on those things that most residents don't even know are here would be just a phenomenal thing. So appreciate Mrs. Kurt's enthusiasm and her leadership on the project and your nerdiness, I guess.
It's why we get along.
Yes. All right, so what to do with Wilcox? So we know that the board is not interested in selling the Wilcox property either. Part of the thinking is you never want to be property poor. Once you sell a land, it's gone, and so the board wants to hold on to this and continue to take responsibility. So even though this project has all these fields and wonderful additions, the board will still own it. It's responsible for it, liability insurance, all the things that the board currently has that stays in place here at Bissell. The same would be true with Wilcox Primary School, and we are excited to talk to you a little bit about the plan for that campus. We know that this is a very busy and active community. People like to be physically fit. People like to be out and about. And we have been working with a company called NFC to talk about the construction of something called an outdoor studio fitness court. So this is what it will look like. This is an artist rendering. And so it is about the size of a tennis court. One half of this property is meant for yoga and dance and such. The other side of it has parkour equipment that is stabilized and is weather resistant. The contract with this company would require them to come out annually to make sure, because of our winters being so brutal here, that the equipment is stable and steady. This wall will be actually an artwork. We would hope to open this up to Twinsburg High School students to design the wall and to paint it to represent our community. So we're pretty excited about this. There's another, that's a realistic looking version. You see some of the parkour equipment. There are very few of these in the country. The closest one happens to be in Beechwood. And the cool connection to this is Derek Schroeder used to be the Parks and Rec director here in Twinsburg. He is there, and under his leadership, they now have a fitness court in Beechwood. So I think it's a pretty cool idea. The neat thing about this is it's equipment that can only be used for individuals the age of 14 and older. This is not meant for the children. So while the children can come to Bissell and enjoy environmental education, the fitness court is meant for 14-year-old and up. So we see this being used by our high school athletic teams for conditioning. We've also talked with Jennifer Bettinson at the city, and she's been engaged in some conversations about how can the city of Twinsburg use this for some of their programming when the district is not using it. In addition to that, there's senior housing right across the street from the current Wilcox lot. Sure can envision some of the seniors coming over and using this for their fitness activities as well. There is an app that you would download that would provide you with your own personalized fitness program using the equipment. So it's very 21st century, but we believe that this would be a great use of the property over at Wilcox. And we also talked about the fact that if an adult is coming to use this, mom or dad, and they have children, what are we going to do with the kids? So our plan is to have an ADA compliant playground near the area where the current playground is at Wilcox. So little kids have something that they can do while their parents are working out on the studio court. So we're pretty excited about this opportunity. This is also going to be built with grant dollars, and we're talking with the funding company now. That application will go in this spring.
All right, this just recaps all of the improvements, relocations to the athletic facilities, as you can see both here and online. And again, all of this information is available on our website as well under the Tiger Legacy Project. So we wanted to include a video of our partners at Brecksville Broadview Heights City School District, and they built something very similar. And what you're going to see is a video that shows the whole construction process really from start to finish. And then it takes you kind of through a zoom through the building. What we want folks to know is just because it's a large school, it still is very personal and personalized to grade levels and to kids. So as you can see, we show that just so folks understand that while it's a large school concept, it's still very personal inside. And you have the different finishes on the outside that sort of break it up. We just don't want people to get this idea that it's just this big box building. It is under the same roof, but still very separate for kids. So as we work our way to the financial slide, we're going to talk through some components that are the same from the project in the fall, and then some changes that we've talked about tonight. So the new pre-K through 6 school still at a little over $86 million. That price has not changed. As Superintendent Powers mentioned to start this meeting, past May though, that number very much will change. OFCC will redo their pricing structure over the summer. So it's kind of like you lock in at the lower rate, so to speak. So a little over $86 million. This doesn't only include, though, the build of this building. We do want folks to understand that in that price, OFCC co-funds the abatement and demolition of old buildings and then the construction of new square footage. So that price does include the asbestos abatement of Wilcox, Bissell, and Dodge, and the demolition of those buildings. The demolition is taking that building down, we're told, to about a foot below the surface, capping off utilities, peeling up old pavement, all of that. So all of that price, that's not going to be another ask in the future of voters. That's all included in that rate, okay? And then as you see down, you see the athletic components that we talked about. $4.5 million for the renovation at the stadium, and then all of the costs with moving the baseball fields around, soccer fields around, and then certain renovations there. We talked a little bit earlier about a contingency. We have $1.7 million built in as a contingency for all of the things that we can't foresee, that the architects can't foresee, any challenges we run into, any issues with materials, all of those kinds of things. Now that takes us to a little over $94.5 million. We told you that this bond is $97 million, down from $107 million in the fall.
Before you switch,
Yep.
just know that the $86 million includes all the technology, all the desks, all the things that students need to learn. So it's not as if it'll be, oh, here's the price of the cost of the building, and oh, residents, now we have to fill the inside. This is inclusive of all of that, and I think that's a really important point to make.
So what rounds out to $97 million is, from the prior screen, a little over $94.5 million. The site work at the new pre-K through 6, we have at about $1.2 million. That's clearing the site, all the zoning things, all the permit things, the drainage things that we're talking about, and we're finding out more from the community about, that actually might have more to do with the border property, but will get addressed in our project. And then the other portion, and the thing I wanted to mention too there, is tying back to Bissell, that proposal. When you partner with OFCC, they're very environmentally conscious and friendly, and you pick your vendors that you work with when you're clearing this much wood. They source it how you want. So the board can sell a lot of the lumber, they can select that, but they can also repurpose it elsewhere. So a lot of that wood and lumber, when we talk about a learning pavilion, those kinds of things, it wouldn't be your traditional 2x4s and 4x4s. It would literally be trees from this site brought over here and repurposed, which is a pretty neat feature. The roof replacement over the gym at RBC, this is something that if you're part of our youth basketball community, you know that this past fall in November, we had a pretty catastrophic failure in the corner of our gym where we had a waterfall coming in because we have like it's a rubber membrane that covers that roof, and it's a lot like a trampoline. And on bad weather days and as it ages, it literally bounces up and down, and it popped the drains out, and it caused a flood to happen in our gym. Long story short, it's not the first time that's happened. It's just the first time it's happened that bad. So we had to have a couple of companies come out and take a look. and the news got worse and worse for us. It started out at, we thought it was going to be about $300,000 to $500,000 to fix it this coming summer. But what ended up happening, the companies were not comfortable with diagnosing it, so we had to bring in a structural engineer for that roof of the gym, and it cannot sustain a new roof, a tear off and a redo of that roof because of the rafter design. So we're actually, our final quote was about $1.2 million to totally replace that roof. We do not have that in our permanent improvement fund to be able to allocate that entire repair. So when we looked at that and presented the Board of Education with that information, we have elected to roll that also into this bond project because it has to get done and it's such a big ticket repair. So when you add everything up, it brings us to $97 million even. And then as we've been discussing, up till May, we are still eligible for that 17% co-funding through the OFCC. When I told you big dollars, that 17% means more. You only apply that 17% to this dollar amount because all the OFCC co-funds is new square footage and tearing down old square footage. The athletic portions and the contingencies, those are all just part of the bond. They're not co-funded by the state. However, that largest dollar amount is, and that's nearly $15 million that the Board of Education would receive down the road. That money can only be used toward other improvements to your facilities. You can't buy equipment with it, can't buy buses, you can't put it into payroll, can't pay retirements, none of that. And the other thing that a board can do with that money, if you listen to our fall program, we talked about the two ways that money can be spent. The other way is taxpayers have said, can you give it back to us? Can you give us a rebate? You know, the answer is yes, but not directly. What the board could do when it gets that money, it could pay down the bond amount. Like if you came into a windfall of money and you wanted to pay down the principal in your mortgage or a car loan, it could do that and then potentially refinance. I'm not the treasurer, so I won't speak to all those options, but that is one way that the Board of Education could give that money back to the community. So you either pay down your bond or you pay against repairing other facilities, and those are your two choices when that money comes. And at this time, I'm going to turn over the financial portion to our treasurer, Ms. Julia Resnaya.
Good evening, everyone. What we have in front of us is our November bond issue. So just to compare the numbers for you, here's a reminder of the prior issue that we not passed in November was at $107 million at 4.27 mils. Calculation done by Summit County Fiscal Office for a 36-year term at 5% interest rate and estimated cost to the property owners at $149 per $100,000 property value. Again, and that property appraised value, it is the one that the county has decided upon and has listed on their website for your properties. The current bond issue for May 6th is $10 million lower at $97 million, 3.84 mils, same 36 years term with 5% interest rate, and the estimated annual cost for the property owner is at $135 per $100,000 property value. So I'm going to try to explain a little bit this cost here. This is what we have, this is what the county calculates, and that's how they provide it to the School Board of Education. Your cost per property per $100,000 value, home value. So we have said, okay, it might be hard for our residents to understand how does this cost exactly relates to their properties, because not too many houses in our school district are about $100,000 value anymore, correct? So we have put some examples for you to be able to relate to, and we have three listed here. A 2-bedroom, 1.5 condo in the city of Twinsburg, selling recently this past December at $185,000, appraised value by Summit County at $146,000, The estimated bond cost is $190 per year or $16 a month. So the county give us $100,000 cost per year. So we are trying to help all of you to have a better understanding to compare to your monthly budgets, because we all of us pay all the bills basically monthly, mortgages, utilities, everything, correct? So we're trying to help all of you to have a better understanding and available for any questions at any time. Our second example is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house in Twinsburg Township, selling at $230,000 in January of 25. Appraised value $161,510. Estimated bond cost $218 a year, which is $18 per month. And then the last example, a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath house in Reminderville, selling price in January $310,000, appraised value $293,350, estimated bond cost $396 per year, which comes to about $33 a month. Okay, any questions there? Take it a little even further and try to help, we have come together as administration and looked for some outside resources, and we have a calculator on the school district website where you can go and actually type in your address, whichever property within the boundaries of the school district, and it will give you the exact number per month cost for the property you're pulling off for your calculations. It is directly connected to the county fiscal's office, so to the appraised values of the houses. So it's pretty straightforward. We try to be transparent as an honest and straightforward as we can be. And so that's available. We will not have an issue number until actually this Friday is the date, March 7th, that the county has given us to share the issue number. So that's when we're going to be able to share that with our community. I can go and probably hop onto this calculator so you can all see how it looks. So that's the calculator, and if we start typing in here on any specific address, I don't know, it pulls them up, and then you click on it, put in your address, and it gives you exactly the per month cost. Okay? Any questions? No. Okay. Anything else that we would like to
So
share?
honestly, we're just trying to make sure that you have all the information that you need to have a greater understanding about the project, including having the bond calculator on the website. In the last campaign, we received lots of positive feedback. It gives you the honest number as far as what it would cost you by the month for the bond issue. And so behind the scenes, we worked with the company to update that. So now this is set for the 3.84 mil bond, which is going to be on the May 6th ballot. We certainly appreciate your presence tonight. Just wanted to open the floor now for any questions that you might have about the project. Lots of questions can be answered. This QR code goes right to the Tiger Legacy Project page on the website. Or if you're not one that likes to do QR codes, then you can go on the district website and scroll down on the left side. There's actually a box you click on, and it'll take you right to Tiger Legacy Project. But our work tonight and has been for the duration of the Tiger Legacy Project is just to answer questions and to provide the community with as much information as you need to know and that you're curious about the project. More than anything, we appreciate your time tonight and your interest in what the school district is looking to do. Yes, ma'am.
A question. So in the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about traffic, right? All the traffic. So what kind of traffic assessment has or has not been done, right? We're going to put this new road condominium complexes on the same side of the street in between two traffic lights currently. As I can tell you, as a resident in Stone Creek, like many of my neighbors, trying to get out and making a left-hand turn is a real pain in the morning when I'm trying to go to work. So, and I'm trying to envision where this road would be with the church and another single-family home in there.
So the track, are you finished?
Yes.
You good? Okay. I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. So again, the traffic study, they operate on the same data as they did before. Now, the benefit that we had in the fall was that there were already traffic lights where they would propose there should be. What may come out of this is they may very well recommend a traffic light to enter into the school. Certainly there'd be school zone lights. The light up at Circle K by the board office, that already exists, and there isn't necessarily a hard and fast rule on the distance between traffic lights and school zones, but I believe that they would recommend a traffic light at the very minimum. I don't know that it would always be one thing that we saw in the first traffic study. Now again, there was already traffic lights down by the high school and RBC and Dodge, but it might be the kind that flashes yellow when school's out. So like, let's say after 6 p.m., just nominally, let's say it kicks over to a yellow flasher only, and it might not be a yellow, red, green, you know what I mean? But I would say they'll probably recommend a light. And of course the school zones. Ravenna Road itself, they didn't recommend when we were gonna put the building where the stadium is now to widen Ravenna Road, so I can't imagine that being part of this at all. But I know that they'll recommend quite a wide egress onto Ravenna Road because they recommended that to us on the current RBC campus. There was a question earlier about why the need for any type of emergency egress out onto Chamberlain Trail or Chamberlain Road. And again, that's because of the volume of kids, and it is a fob gated access to where it's not going to be parents sneaking in to try to beat the traffic. If you don't have a fob to open the gate, you're out of luck, and that's police and fire only. So the traffic study, they're working on that now. I don't think it'll take them a whole lot longer. The first time it took us a little over a month, but they've got a lot of that data still that they can reuse because we're still in the same school year. So that's the kind of the recommendations I can foresee them making based on the first study. Does that help answer your question at all?
Sort of. Just like the road itself, like where would that really be positioned?
Like a
The
driveway?
road now, so the driveway itself, so we're gonna create this new road, right? Where would that actually be located?
Right in this area, like where the churches is now.
Yeah, okay.
Right in this area. Your concern is the length of time it takes you sometimes to get out now, and you're thinking it'll be
If you're
worse.
gonna put a light right there, that is not really helpful, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that's probably where they'd recommend it though, just because that's where the main traffic would be.
If this passes, what would be the timeline for construction? Like, when do you think it would start this project, and like, when do you think it would end?
Great question. The beautiful thing about the revised plan is we're not waiting for Tiger Stadium to move. That's not moving, and this is a different plot of land to build on. So let's suppose the voters support this on May 6th. It's a yes vote. Shortly thereafter, the site work begins on this property. At the same point, we begin to engage the design process. Design process takes about a year. You have to engage as many people in this as you can. Moving that forward, it is projected that the students would be in their new school at the 28-29 school year. So construction is supposed to be completed April, May of 28. And then the students' belongings, all the stuff will be moved from the buildings up to the new facility, and then the new equipment then installed as well. And then the work will begin to abate this building and Dodge and Wilcox and those 3 buildings and demolish. So that's the scope of it. Now with respect to the athletic fields, same thing, there has to be a design, right? First and foremost, the varsity field needs to be designed, and the ninth grade JV field will have to be designed. Those things are in tandem with each other. We have to move the JV ninth grade field first. So in light of that, that's the field that'll be moved first so that it makes space for the varsity field on the campus of Twinsburg High School. As that is going on, then the design process will begin for Tiger Stadium and for Hoon Field. And Hoon and the varsity field will probably be done just about at the same time. One of the things that we're very much aware of is Title IX, and so you cannot have this fantastic baseball field for boys, varsity baseball, and Hoon Field, which is our Lady Tiger softball field, is wanting for lots of things. So we would want to construct the boys varsity field at the same time that the Hoon Field would be getting its renovations.
So,
Yes, sir.
looking at the overall plan, the red line identifies the land swap, is that correct?
That's,
Have the
yeah, it doesn't
piece
have
from-
this leg of
yeah, it's
it.
missing a little bit.
That's a separate parcel, but yes, this is the entire parcel.
Because I'm hearing a lot about, and from myself as well, about proximity to the condo development. Has any thought been given to leaving the building footprint where it is, moving the parking to the
Yep.
other side?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's already, and that feedback came out loud and clear at our Wilcox meeting, and we could easily shrink this parking in this way and bring it down here and up this way if need be, or over. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like, I think we've already committed to that in verbiage, that would absolutely, that we're too close.
I didn't know
Yeah.
how written in stone the land swap was.
Yeah, as long as we build within the confines of it and whatever, is a good neighborhood partner. But yeah, we would definitely come in this way and go north and south with the parking.
Yeah, I was thinking that the parking on the other side of the building.
Oh, you're talking
I think
about.
he meant just flip it.
Oh, well, I will
both
tell
sides.
you, when I said earlier, the intentionality of having the building deeper into the woods was actually to keep the loudest part of the building is the building. And the playground space.
I would be in agreement with that as long as the parking was on the other side.
Yeah.
But you can't do that because of the land swap.
Well, technically, this whole thing could flip around, but then we might be having playground noise right to the, so the intentionality was to try to keep it positioned the way it is.
Thank you.
But yeah, for sure.
Good question.
All right, last question for me, I promise. So we talked about RV Chamberlain, and you're going to patch it up. It's obviously at the end of its life. What are your plans as far as replacing RV Chamberlain? Are we 5 years away from that? Are we 2 years away from that? When's the next ask going to be for RV Chamberlain to be replaced?
Yeah, I don't think that that's on the horizon to replace it in full. It does need repair and renovation. Again, the dollars that the board would receive from the OFCC could be used for that project to renovate RBC. In addition to that, as Matt indicated, the $2 million the board gets every year from the PI fund, where we would not be needing to fix the power here or fix the heat at Dodge. Those dollars would then go to the capital improvement projects at the middle school.
Technically, just putting money into an old car, right? You're going to want a new one soon. I'm just curious when that's going to be.
Yeah, that's not on the horizon, nor has there been any conversation. To tell you the truth, what the OFCC report has directed the board is that there's room, according to the OFCC report, to move the middle school students and staff up to Twinsburg High School, and then to bring that building down. By square footage, that's true, it's just a calculation. But if you think about mixing a 7th grader with a 12th grader and the needs of a middle school student versus a high school student, you can't do that very quickly. It takes a lot of planning and coordination. So if down the line the board decides that RBC is no longer able to support the education of students, they can make the decision to shift that population up to Twinsburg High School. It would just take a lot of planning to be able to do that. Well, we appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for your questions. If you are a resident in the surrounding communities and you would like us to come out and walk your property and talk about what you're worried about, please make sure we get your name and phone number. We've already talked to the Homeowners Association president at Stone Creek, and as soon as this weather warms up a little bit, we'll be out to walk that with them. Anyone else would like us to come to you? If you have an opportunity for a meeting in your community and you would like us to come to you, Matt and I and the crew is happy to do that as well. Just let us know when that would be and we will show up. So until then, we hope you have a great night. Thank you for your interest in our project.